Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. He moved to the woods to escape the world. No neighbors, no rules, just peace. Until she arrived, HOA president, entitled, relentless, and she wanted his land. What followed wasn't just a boundary dispute, it was war, and he had a dog, a camera, and zero patience. You don't move to 6 acres of woodland in Georgia unless you want to be left the hell alone. That was the plan. After 12 years in the Marines, I'd earned my quiet. I bought the land outright with my VA benefits, built a small but solid ranch-style house, and laid down a half-mile gravel driveway that twisted through tall pines and low oaks like a private forest path. No neighbors in sight. No HOAs sniffing around about paint colors or mailbox designs. Just me, my dog Baron, and enough distance from humanity to breathe. That solitude lasted exactly 5 months. It started with the sound of tires on gravel. Not mine. I'd know the crunch of my Tacoma anywhere. This was something lighter, wrong cadence. I was on the porch sipping my coffee, Baron at my feet, when a brand new silver Lexus slid around the bend in my driveway like it belonged there. It rolled past the private property marker nailed to the tree, hand-painted, damn clear. Out stepped a woman dressed in pastel tennis gear and entitlement. She had that HOA energy before she even opened her mouth. "Hi there," she chirped, waving like we were old pals. "You must be Matthew." "It's Matt," I said. I didn't smile. Baron didn't bark. He just stared. "I'm Karen Dubois. I just purchased the lot to the southeast." Whispering Pines. She said the name like it was supposed to impress me. "I'm the president of the HOA there." "Good for you," I replied. She kept grinning like she hadn't heard the disinterest in my voice. "We're so excited to have you as part of the community." "I'm not," I said flatly. The smile cracked just a bit. I added, "I'm not part of your HOA. My land's zoned independently, bought it from a retired surveyor, deeded separately. I'm not in your jurisdiction." "Well, that's a little murky," she said, tilting her head like a cartoon owl. "There's a spirit of the community we like to maintain here in Whispering Pines. Cohesion, standards, and, well, your house." She looked past me like she'd swallowed a lemon. "What about it?" "Well, there's no lattice skirting on the foundation. No front-facing shutters. The paint's untraditional. It's called weather-resistant matte," I said. "Designed for climates with high humidity and low tolerance for HOA bullshit." She blinked. "And the gravel path," she started. "That's my private drive," I cut in. "Built and registered in '96. Full easement rights. It's not a shared road." "Oh, I see," she said, with that smile people wear when they absolutely don't. "It just naturally connects to our network of walking trails. It flows so well." "It flows into my damn land." Karen nodded, as if she were humoring a drunk uncle at Thanksgiving. "Of course. Still, we do encourage neighbors to consider community aesthetics, if you're ever open to participating." "I'm not." Baron stood up then, not growling, just stretching. But it was enough. Karen's eyes flicked to him. "Is he trained?" "Better than most people." She took a half step back. "Some of the residents might be uncomfortable with a large, unrestrained animal." "He's restrained," I said. "He's on my land." Karen sniffed. "Well, I suppose that's something we'll have to address." "Good luck with that." She left without another word, and I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. Over the next few weeks, things got weird. I started finding folded paper flyers tucked under a rock by the mailbox. "Welcome to Whispering Pines," they chirped. "Here's what to expect as a contributing member of our community." Then came envelopes, cheap printer ink, no return address, listing reminders about lawn length, acceptable facade colors, and a schedule for HOA dues. My name wasn't even on them. Just to the resident at my address. It was like being targeted by a cult that didn't know how to take no for an answer. I ignored it all, didn't respond, didn't escalate. I figured ignoring nonsense usually starves it of oxygen. Then I noticed the tire tracks. My gravel road had always been pristine, tight, clean turns, no scatter. Now there were lazy arcs near the shoulder. A small spot under the old oak where the gravel was disturbed, rutted like someone had eased a vehicle off the drive and idled there. First, I thought it was a delivery van turning around, but it happened again and again. One afternoon, I was coming back from town and saw a familiar silver Lexus pulled just off the road, practically nestled into my shrubs like a goddamn picnic. No one inside, just sitting there. I parked behind it and waited. 3 minutes later, Karen came strolling out of the woods with a pink water bottle and a golden retriever off-leash, trotting happily along. The dog squatted right next to my firewood pile. Karen didn't even flinch. "Karen," I called out, stepping from the truck. She startled, turned, then smiled like she was surprised to find me on my own land. "Oh, Matt, just enjoying the trail. You mean my property. It's all so interconnected," she said breezily. "Hard to tell where community ends and private begins." "Not really. There's a fence." "Well, there aren't any gates." "I didn't think I needed them." She clucked her tongue, glancing toward my house. "You live so close to a community, Matt. It's only natural people will want to flow through. You can't stop nature. Try me." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. Barron had stepped out onto the porch, watching like a silent bouncer at a backwoods club. Karen tugged her dog's collar. Not that it helped. The thing was already nosing my stacked logs. "Let's not be unfriendly," she said. "We're all neighbors after all." "No," I said. "I'm your neighbor, not your subject. There's a difference." She got in her car and backed out slowly, making a show of avoiding every bump like my driveway had personally offended her. That night, I hammered a new sign into the gravel by the bend. Black paint on cedar plank, all caps, "Private drive, do not block. Trespassers will be reported." I figured that would end it, but something told me I should have added, "Especially you, Karen." I thought the sign would do the trick. It was a solid plank, bolted into a pressure-treated post, buried 3 feet down. Clean lettering, visible from both directions. I even brushed gravel around the base so it looked deliberate, not like some desperate redneck scare tactic. It read loud and clear, "Private drive, do not block, trespassers will be reported." The kind of thing most folks would take seriously. Apparently, most folks didn't include Karen Dubois. The next morning, the sign was gone. Not knocked over, not broken, just gone. Post, bolts, wood, vanished like it had never been there. No debris, no tire tracks nearby. Just a faint rectangle of undisturbed gravel and the smell of bullshit. I walked the edge of the trees looking for drag marks. Nothing. Barron sniffed around, tail low, but didn't bark. I didn't have footage. My cameras only covered the porch and front side of the house. The driveway bent out of view too far down the line. I made a mental note to fix that. I stood there a while, arms crossed, staring at the empty space like it owed me an apology. That evening, I got a new HOA newsletter. This time, it came in an official-looking envelope, wax-stamped, the whole performance. Inside was a letter printed on fake parchment paper with a watermark that read, "Whispering Pines welcomes you." I didn't read past the first paragraph. As a valued member of our residential ecosystem, you are encouraged to embrace the shared ethos of open access to natural thoroughfares which, though not always codified, remain spiritually communal and in alignment with the values of Whispering Pines. Spiritually communal? I had to put the letter down before my blood pressure boiled over. They'd somehow managed to combine sanctimony, bureaucracy, and trespassing into a single sentence. I was done playing nice. Next morning, I called up an attorney I knew from my security consulting days, Paul Reardon, ex-judge advocate, dry as a saltine, but thorough as hell. I emailed him the parcel map, deed scans, and everything I had on the driveway's designation. By noon, he called back. "Matt," he said, in that lawyer monotone that makes everything sound like a funeral, "your land is clean. Driveway's been registered as a private easement since 1996. You're outside the HOA by a full 2 zoning layers, no chance of annexation without a formal vote and your consent, which I assume they don't have. They don't even have my attention. Well, now they have your irritation. Want me to send a letter? Not yet, but get one ready." By the end of the day, I had printed copies of everything: property maps, easement documents, zoning district rulings, and a laminated version of my previous sign, this time bolted to a steel stake sunk in concrete. I also added a second sign beneath it: "Not a public trail, not a parking lot, not your shortcut." The font was less polite. That was a Friday. On Saturday morning, I caught her in the act. I was walking Barron along the side trail that runs parallel to the driveway. He likes the smell of cedar roots after rain. As we came up around the bend, I heard tires crunching gravel, slow and steady. There she was, Karen Dubois, parking her Lexus off to the right, just past the spot where she'd trashed the first sign. She didn't see me. I stopped. Barron stopped. We watched. She stepped out, purse over one shoulder, water bottle dangling like a prop. No leash. Same golden retriever. She glanced at my new sign, made a face, and, without missing a beat, grabbed it with both hands and yanked. Hard. She wasn't expecting reinforced steel. The post didn't budge. She yanked again, then kicked at the base like a child denied candy. Finally, realizing she wasn't getting it out, she turned back toward her car. That's when she saw me. I didn't say anything. Barron sat beside me, panting happily. Karen flushed, then smoothed her tennis skirt like nothing had happened. "Oh, hello? Out for a walk?" "No," I said. "Out to watch you commit vandalism." "That sign is extremely aggressive," she said sharply, like I'd called her a slur. "It sends the wrong message. It's unwelcoming." "It's not a welcome mat. You're creating a hostile environment, only for people who keep parking on private land." Karen crossed her arms. "You live in a community, Matt. You don't get to wall yourself off from everyone. These roads, these spaces, they're part of a shared lifestyle. Even if the law doesn't say so, the spirit of the neighborhood does." I took a step forward. "Lady, the only thing spiritual about this road is how much I pray people stop treating it like a damn sidewalk." She opened her mouth to argue, then thought better of it. She stalked back to her car, threw open the door, and drove off, kicking gravel in every direction. Barron sneezed. I couldn't blame him. Later that day, I installed a motion-activated camera on the pine nearest the bend. It had a night vision lens and LTE backup, fed straight to the cloud. No more games. But Karen wasn't done. The following Monday, my neighbor Lewis, a soft-spoken retired trucker who lived on the next lot over, stopped by with his usual peace offering, a Ziploc bag of homemade beef jerky and neighborhood gossip. "You see this?" he asked, handing me a folded HOA bulletin. "They're saying the trails belong to everyone now." I unfolded it. Right there, middle of the page. Friendly reminder, though ownership boundaries exist, the Whispering Pines community encourages respectful shared access to all natural paths and woodland driveways. Our beauty belongs to all of us. I stared at the words. "They're writing propaganda," I muttered. Lewis laughed. "Karen thinks she's the mayor of Georgia." I stared out toward the bend in my drive. The gravel was still clean. For now. But something told me that steel post wouldn't be the last thing she'd try to pull out by force. Some people use lawsuits. Others use politics. Karen Dubois uses police. It was Wednesday morning, just after 10. I was outside checking the trail cams, replacing SD cards, when I heard the crunch of tires again. For once, it wasn't Karen's Lexus. This time, it was a marked cruiser, slow rolling up my driveway like I'd called them myself. Barron was sitting by the porch, chewing on a pine branch. He didn't even flinch. I stood there, holding a screwdriver and half a thermos of coffee, watching the patrol car approach. When it stopped, 2 officers stepped out, both of them local deputies, mid-30s, standard gear. No guns drawn, no urgency, just caution. That made me more suspicious than anything. "You Matt Barkley?" the first one asked, checking a clipboard. "Barkley, yeah. I'm Deputy Rollins. This is Deputy Hayes. We got a report of a disturbance involving a dog, possibly a threat of violence." My stomach turned cold. "A what?" "Complainant states you threatened her with an aggressive dog, used intimidation, and made verbal threats during a confrontation near your driveway." "You're kidding." "No, sir. Mind if we talk for a minute?" I sighed, motioned toward the porch. Barron watched them, but didn't move. Good boy. I sat down on the steps and told them exactly what had happened. Karen parked illegally on my property again, then tried to rip out a legally posted sign again, and when confronted, spun it into some melodramatic HOA version of a hostage situation. Rollins took notes while Hayes watched Barron like he was expecting him to sprout horns. "You got any proof?" Rollins asked. "Yeah," I said. "Give me 2 minutes." I went inside, pulled up the camera footage from the tree-mounted trail cam and a backup clip from the porch. Both showed Karen in glorious HD, yanking at the sign, me approaching, calm posture, no shouting, Barron off to the side, tail wagging. Not exactly a scene from Cujo. I handed over a tablet with the footage. They watched in silence. No one said a word until the clip ended. "Well," Rollins finally muttered, "that's not what she described." I figured. "She said you stepped toward her aggressively, used your dog to block her car." That he growled. You can hear the bird chirps clearer than my voice in that video. Barron didn't growl, didn't even move. Hayes scratched his head. This is the second time we've had issues with Whispering Pines, always vague complaints. Never anything that sticks. Rollins gave me a look. She's been warned before? Not by law, but I've told her off more times than I can count. All right, well, we won't be pursuing anything today. But for the record, any future escalation, you might want to file a formal notice of trespass. That makes enforcement cleaner. I nodded. Can I file a complaint for a false report? You can. But it's tricky without clear malicious intent. She lied, I said flatly. Yeah, but proving she knew she was lying is the bar. They left without incident, but the whole encounter left a sour taste in my mouth. I hadn't served 2 tours overseas just to get gaslit by a suburban dictator with a fake legal compass and a warped sense of entitlement. 2 hours later, I got an email from the Whispering Pines HOA. Subject line, Important Community Safety Notice. The message read, due to increasing concerns regarding uncontrolled animals and uncooperative individuals, the board reminds all residents to report unsafe behavior to the proper authorities. If you or your family feel threatened by certain domestic pets or individuals, please document the incident and reach out to HOA leadership. Attached was a stock image of a growling German Shepherd, not even a Rottweiler. I wasn't named, but I didn't need to be. I printed it out, pinned it to my fridge, and wrote Barron is unimpressed across the top in Sharpie, but the kicker came later that night. Around 8, just after sunset, I stepped out to bring in the garbage bins. The woods were quiet. The gravel was still. Then I noticed something fluttering on my mailbox. A handwritten note. No envelope, just folded paper tucked into the flag. You should be more careful with your animal. Things happen to dogs out here. Ticks, snakes, accidents. Just looking out for you. A concerned neighbor. I stared at the note for a long time. Then I burned it in the fire pit. The next morning, I went to the local animal control office and registered Barron under Georgia's Protective Companion status, special designation for trained security dogs with documented behavior certification. I also ordered 2 new cameras, a solar motion light, and a no-nonsense lockable gate kit. If Karen wanted a turf war, fine. I'd treat it like Fallujah. Barron, he just wanted another pine branch. Some mornings you wake up and just know it's gonna be stupid. The sun was barely over the trees when I heard the familiar crunch of tires on gravel. Not mine, not UPS. It was too early for either. I was standing in the kitchen pouring kibble into Barron's bowl when his ears perked up and he moved to the front window like a sentry. I followed him. Lexus. Again. I stepped out onto the porch, coffee in hand, barefoot, not in a hurry. No reason to rush. It was the same pattern every time. Park, walk, pretend the property line didn't exist. Golden retriever off leash, tail up like it owned the damn planet. Only this time, something was different. Karen didn't stop at the usual gravel spot near the shrubs. She pulled in deeper, tires rolling right up to the edge of the fence line. 2 feet further than she'd ever dared, like she was testing how far she could push the envelope. I didn't say anything, just went around back, unlatched the side gate, and let Barron out. No leash, no warning, just opened the gate, stepped aside, and let him decide what kind of mood he was in. He didn't run, didn't bark. He trotted out, tongue lolling, did a big lazy loop around the side yard, then spotted the Lexus and froze mid-step. I watched from the deck as he moved slowly, silently, toward it, head up, shoulders squared. He didn't snarl. He didn't growl. He just stared. Karen's door creaked open. She stepped out with her water bottle and yoga mat like she was heading to a private spa. She didn't even see him at first. Then she did, and everything changed. She froze, like someone had hit pause on her remote. Her eyes locked on Barron, who stood 10 feet from her car, not moving, not making a sound, just watching her. She squeaked. A tiny, high-pitched noise like a deflating balloon. Then she screamed. Not a startled yelp, a full-body, apocalyptic, theatrical scream that echoed off the pine trunks and scattered crows into the sky. She spun around, tried to fumble the door handle, dropped her water bottle, screamed again, and finally dove back into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut behind her. Then came the 911 call. I couldn't hear the dispatcher, but I could hear Karen. He's trying to kill me. He unleashed a dog on me. There's a killer dog. Oh my God, I'm trapped. Send help, he's standing there. He's watching me. The only one watching her was Baron. And me, from my porch, still sipping coffee. I don't think I've ever seen someone more hysterical inside a luxury vehicle. She was hitting buttons, locking and unlocking doors, crying, screaming into the phone, slapping the dashboard like it had betrayed her. Baron didn't move. He just stood like a granite statue with fur, not even tail wagging. Just still, like a guardian at the gates of hell, watching a particularly shrill soul panic itself into oblivion. After 5 solid minutes of shouting, she switched tactics. He's sitting on his porch just watching. He doesn't care. He's drinking something. Oh my God, he's drinking something while this monster is stalking me. I took a long, exaggerated sip of my coffee and waved. She shrieked again. Baron sat down. That broke her. She started honking the horn, rapid fire, panicked, like she thought it summoned cavalry. Then she rolled down the window about 2 inches and screamed, "Get your damn dog away, or I'm calling the police again." "You're already on the line with them," I called back. She let out a sound like a goose being exercised. 10 minutes later, the cops showed up. 2 cruisers this time. Same 2 deputies from last week, Rollins and Hayes, plus a new one I didn't recognize. They parked on the edge of the drive and approached cautiously. Karen refused to get out of her car. "He's still there," she sobbed through the cracked window. "He'll attack me if I move." Rollins approached me first. I was still sitting on the porch, feet up, mug half full. "Morning," I said. "Coffee?" He didn't answer at first, just looked past me at Baron, who by now had laid down in the grass, completely relaxed, eyes half closed like he was sunbathing. "You let him out knowing she was here?" Rollins asked. "Didn't know she was here until she was already parked." "He's not restrained. He's on my land. And trained." "You got documentation?" I nodded, handed over a folder I'd prepped days earlier. Inside, proof of Baron's security dog certification, signed letters from his trainer, property deed with driveway zoning, time-stamped photos of my signs, and a copy of the Georgia Code on protective companion animals. Rollins thumbed through it all in silence. Hayes walked up next. "She's refusing to exit the vehicle," he muttered. "Says she fears for her life." "From a dog lying in the grass?" I asked. "She also claims you taunted her by drinking tea." I held up my mug. "It's coffee." Hayes rubbed his face like he was suppressing the urge to quit. I stood up, gave a single hand signal. Baron rose immediately, padded over to the porch, and sat next to me like we were posing for a Norman Rockwell painting from hell. Rollins nodded, clearly impressed. "She's not getting out until he's in the house." I shrugged. "Sure." I opened the door. Baron went inside. No fuss, no drama, just obedience. 5 full minutes later, Karen finally cracked open her car door and crawled out like she'd survived a hostage crisis. Mascara streaked, hair stuck to her forehead, voice hoarse from shrieking. She looked like she'd just survived a war crime. Rollins walked her through what just happened. "Ma'am, you parked on private property. The animal was not threatening you." He did not approach, did not make physical contact, and complied with verbal command. "You have no legal standing here." "But..." "He released the dog," she insisted. "That's intent. That's assault with an animal." Hayes actually laughed. "No, ma'am, that's called having a yard." Karen looked at them, then at me, then at the house, and finally, she went quiet. She climbed back into her car, reversed slowly, then peeled out with as much dignity as someone covered in dog hair and bad decisions could muster. Rollins turned to me. "You might want to consider an actual gate," he said. "The dog's clearly trained, but next time she'll bring lawyers." I nodded. "Already ordered the kit." He nodded back. "Good dog." Baron barked once from the window. Perfect timing. I thought it would calm down after the dog incident. For once, I thought wrong. The week after Karen's dramatic Lexus meltdown was eerily quiet. No Lexus, no notes, no newsletters, no fake emergency calls. It was almost peaceful, the kind of calm that comes before a tornado eats your barn. It was Lewis who brought the first clue. He showed up with another bag of beef jerky and a puzzled look on his face. "Hey, you seen the new HOA bulletin?" I hadn't. I wasn't on the mailing list. Not officially. But that never stopped them before. Lewis handed me a glossy 2-page printout with the Whispering Pines HOA logo at the top. Right there in the middle, under a section titled Community Integration Update, was a low-res map of the development. Except something was very wrong. My property, All 6 acres of it was now shaded in a light green color labeled Pending Inclusion Zone. A dotted line ran across the bend in my driveway, connecting it to the Whispering Pines trail system. Underneath the map, as the community grows, so too must our sense of unity. The board is reviewing natural property extensions for inclusion in Phase 3 of Whispering Pines. There was even a bullet point: new parcels identified for rezoning and aesthetic standard review. I stared at it so long, the text started to blur. "They're trying to swallow my land," I said finally. Lewis nodded grimly. "That's what it looks like." I scanned the rest of the bulletin. No mention of consent, no legal disclaimers. Just cheerful HOA language implying that my property was now fair game for regulation design standards and, God help me, community cohesion. That's when I called Reardon, my attorney. I sent him a scan of the bulletin and waited. 10 minutes later, he was on the phone, his tone more animated than usual. "Matt, that's a serious problem," he said. "They're implying a zoning transition which requires formal county action. If they sent that out without a vote, without your consent, and without notifying the zoning commission, it's not just misleading, it could be grounds for legal action. Can we prove they're serious and not just posturing?" Let me dig. 3 days. Later, Reardon called back with a voice like a smoking gun. "You're gonna love this. I spoke with a contact in the county recorder's office. Whispering Pines submitted a preliminary inquiry into expanding HOA boundaries last fall. They attached an unofficial draft annexation plan that includes your parcel. They never contacted me. They didn't have to. Yet. It wasn't a formal filing, just a hypothetical expansion. But here's the kicker. The submission came from Karen Dubois personally. Of course it did. I asked him to send me everything. By that evening, I had a PDF copy of the annexation sketch, a dated email from Karen to the Zoning Commission, and internal notes from the HOA meeting where she'd floated the idea of absorption of peripheral lots for aesthetic harmonization. That's what she called it. Aesthetic harmonization. Like my house was some pimple they needed to Photoshop out of their suburban magazine spread. It wasn't just about petty vendettas anymore. She'd been planning to rope my land into her little fiefdom since day one. The parking, the dog complaints, the fake friendliness. All of it, part of a strategy to establish use and familiarity before trying to force jurisdiction. And it got worse. Later that week, I got a visit from Joe, a local fence contractor I'd hired once to put up a temporary barrier along the north side of the property. He looked uneasy. "Hey man," he said, "just figured you'd want to know. Someone from Whispering Pines contacted me last month asking for an estimate on installing a decorative entry arch at the south bend of your driveway. Said they were in the process of integrating the outer trail lots. He even showed me the email, sender karendubois.hoa@whisperingpines.gov.gov. They made themselves a fake government domain. She tried to use me to mark your land as hers," Joe said, shaking his head. I thanked him and gave him $100 just for bringing it to me. That night, I installed 2 new cameras. I also added a 3rd sign at the base of the drive. This is not HOA property. This is not a trail. This is not a negotiation. I didn't stop there. The next morning, I drove down to the county zoning office and filed a formal challenge to any attempts to reclassify my land. I attached maps, correspondence, and witness declarations. I requested a written statement that no current rezoning actions were under review. The salesman, a man named Teddy, who looked like he hadn't slept since 2 in the morning, silently looked around. "The Whispering Pines again?" "I'm sorry," he muttered. "You are the 3rd visitor this year." "Excuse me." "Trying to redraw lines." Quietly. They like pushing boundaries, literally. On my way out, I saw a familiar car parked out front. Lexus, silver, tinted. Karen, sitting behind the wheel, sunglasses on, watching. We locked eyes as I passed. I gave her a polite 2-finger wave. She didn't wave back. I never wanted to be the guy who sues his neighbors. But there comes a point where being polite just gives them time to reload. After Karen's fake annexation map and the shady fence contractor tip, Reardon and I filed for a cease and desist order against the Whispering Pines HOA. It was served by the end of the week, hand-delivered to Karen's pristine porch by a sheriff's deputy who, according to Louis, walked back to his car whistling like he'd just handed out a winning lotto ticket. It didn't stop her. 2 days later, another HOA bulletin went out. This one with language so vague and lawyer-dodging it was practically a parody. As part of ongoing discussions regarding community continuity and visual harmony, the board continues to explore avenues for shared stewardship of the adjoining natural parcels. No map this time, but everyone in the community knew whose natural parcel they meant, so we pushed the button. Reardon filed a civil complaint in Superior Court. Unauthorized use of private property, false emergency report, attempted fraudulent rezoning, defamation via public notices, and my favorite, willful misrepresentation of jurisdiction to third. Parties I was suing Karen personally and the HOA as an entity. When the court date arrived, I wore boots. Not to make a statement, just because I didn't own a suit and wasn't about to buy one for this circus. The courtroom was cold, smelled like lemon polish and old paper. Karen sat at the defendant's table in a pastel blazer that looked like it cost more than my truck's last repair. Her HOA attorney looked like he'd been pulled from a corporate seminar and hadn't slept in a week. Reardon, calm as ever, laid out the facts like a sniper. Satellite images of my driveway from 20 years ago, the original easement deed, security footage of Karen ripping signs out of the ground, audio from the killer dog, 911 call, where I can be heard calmly sipping coffee while Barron lounges on the lawn like a retired heavyweight champ. But the best part? Reardon had subpoenaed a former HOA treasurer, a soft-spoken man in his 60s named David Myers, who'd resigned months earlier for health reasons. Under oath, he told a very different story. Karen, he said, had personally proposed the idea of absorbing non-compliant parcels into the HOA through quiet community redistricting. She called it aesthetic realignment. She'd even asked him to backdate meeting minutes to show consent from the board, which he refused. I thought she was joking at first, David said from the stand. But when she printed a map with Barclay's property colored green and said, "Let's make this official," I knew it was real. The courtroom went dead silent. Karen turned white as drywall. Then Reardon dropped the cherry on top. An internal HOA email from Karen to another board member, obtained via court order, dated 3 months before the first incident. Once we get control of the eastern parcel, Barclay, we can push through the Phase 3 trail loop. He doesn't even have a gate. We can make the transition look organic. Push through. Control. Transition look organic. It wasn't neighborly. It was a blueprint for annexation. Karen's lawyer objected. The judge overruled him. The jury didn't even blink. Next came damages. Reardon walked them through it with surgical precision. Defamation, community emails suggesting I was unstable and dangerous. False emergency call, police time, public resources, reputational harm, property damage and use, tire ruts on my driveway, loss of privacy, degradation of peace and quiet I paid for. Legal fees, weeks of preparation, multiple filings, response to aggressive HOA behavior. When the dust settled, the judge ruled, Karen personally liable for $55,000 in total damages, $15,000 for defamation, $12,000 for property misuse and trespassing, $7,500 for the false 911 call, $2,000 for emotional distress, $18,500 in legal fees, reimbursement. The HOA was ordered to issue a formal public correction via bulletin and website. Cease all language implying control over non-member lots. Revoke Karen's presidency pending internal review. When the verdict was read, Karen didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared straight ahead like she couldn't believe her personal empire had been toppled by a man in boots and a dog with better manners than most of her board. Outside the courtroom, a local reporter from a community blog tried to interview me. "Mr. Barclay, do you have a comment on your victory?" I looked into the camera and smiled. I just want to be left alone. Barron, waiting by the truck, barked once in agreement. Justice is supposed to feel like a clean break. In reality, it's more like pulling out a rusted nail. Satisfying, sure, but it still leaves a hole. The morning after the verdict, I woke up to find 2 things waiting for me at the base of my driveway. A crumpled Whispering Pines yard sign, snapped in half, and a fresh HOA newsletter tucked into a plastic sleeve nailed to a stake just over the property line. A final whimper from the Hydra after losing its head. This one was different. To our residents, In light of recent legal developments, the board acknowledges prior missteps and miscommunications regarding parcel boundaries and community expectations. Whispering Pines affirms that Mr. Barkley's property is not and has never been under HOA jurisdiction. No flowery language, no spiritual common space, just cold, begrudging admission. Karen, of course, had vanished from public view. Word was she resigned from the board before the revocation could take effect. Classic move. Some said she left town. Others claimed she was still holed up in her house. Blinds drawn, dogs kenneled, planning her next reincarnation like a Disney villain between sequels. Didn't matter to me. I had new gates to install. The contractor came on Friday. Big guy named Tom with a quiet laugh and a serious respect for boundary lines. Together, we put up a 12-foot metal gate across the entry bend, complete with motion-activated lighting, keypad access, and a remote app. I paid extra for a secondary solar battery and a heavy-duty camera with facial recognition. It wasn't paranoia, it was policy now. Barron sat nearby the whole time, supervising with mild curiosity and deep sighs. Every time a drill screamed, he tilted his head like we were interrupting nap hour. Once the gate was up, I had one more thing made. A new custom sign mounted right at the front, polished wood with gold letters burned in deep. Warning, private property, protected by law and by dog. You park, you stay. Underneath that, I had a small LED panel installed that alternated two messages. Trespassers last seen, auto-updated date. Live video feed enabled word traveled fast. By Monday, I noticed fewer joggers cutting through the woods. No cars creeping near the trailhead. Not even a whisper of HOA presence near my line. The silence wasn't just peace. It was respect, earned the hard way. But what surprised me most were the quiet gestures. Lewis brought over homemade chili and said, "Hell of a thing, Matt. You did what nobody else could." I raised an eyebrow. "Nobody?" He nodded. "You're not the only one they've pushed around. Just the first one to punch back in court." A week later, I got an envelope. No return address. Inside was a simple note written in blocky pen. "Thank you for standing up. Not all of us could. Lot 17. A neighbor I'd never met. I realized then that this whole time, Karen wasn't just fighting me. She was laying the groundwork for a quiet expansion, grabbing control one compliant neighbor at a time. I was just the one who said no loud enough to make the walls shake. So I did one last thing. I called Reardon and asked if I could publish a redacted version of the ruling. No personal info, just facts. He cleared it. I printed 20 copies and left them in a waterproof box on a wooden post near the main road. On the lid, "Think before you join." I didn't need revenge. I wanted precedent. By the end of the month, 3 households had submitted requests to formally withdraw from Whispering Pines. 2 others put up small signs of their own. Private land, no HOA access. A movement, small but loud. Barron. He got a new collar, black leather, brass tag that read, "Security Chief, EST, 2023. We started walking the perimeter again at sunset, same as always, only now it felt different. Not like defense, like legacy. A line drawn once and for all. The trees still whispered, but the pines weren't so smug anymore. Some people moved to the woods to escape the noise. Turns out, sometimes the noise follows you in a Lexus and tries to pave your gravel. It's been 4 months since the court ruling. The seasons have shifted. The air smells like pine and gun oil again, and I've finally started sleeping with both eyes closed. Mostly. Karen still vanished. Whispers said she tried selling the house, but the listing stalled. Apparently, charming HOA leader's residence doesn't attract buyers when every local blog still links her name to illegal zoning attempts and dog-related meltdowns. The HOA. Gutted. 2 board members resigned after Reardon started probing their personal involvement in the annexation scheme. One of them tried to blame miscommunication with leadership, but when the internal emails came out, that defense collapsed faster than Karen's mascara during the dog standoff. Whispering Pines' website now features an actual disclaimer. The HOA recognizes that adjacent parcels, even when contiguous with community paths, are protected by private ownership and exempt from association jurisdiction unless explicitly agreed upon by deed and vote. In other words, stay the hell off my land. But this story isn't about revenge. Not really. It's about a line. Not just a line on a plat map or a faded marker on a pine tree. A real line. Drawn in gravel, defended with cameras, enforced with law, and guarded by a Rottweiler with the patience of a monk and the resting face of a SWAT operator. Baron's older now, graying a little around the snout, still sharp, still loyal. Still curls up under the deck when the cicadas start, tail flicking like he's listening for intruders in Morse code. People wave when they drive by now, even folks I've never met. One time a teenager on a bike stopped and asked if this was the house where the HOA got bodied. I told him to keep pedaling before the dog filed a cease and desist. But you know what's funny? Despite everything, I don't hate this place. Not even a little. The trees are still mine. The air still tastes clean. The porch creaks like it's supposed to. And when the wind hits just right, I can hear nothing but birds and the low growl of freedom. Usually barren, dreaming about chasing HOA newsletters down the road. I've started carving again. Woodwork. Something I used to do when I needed quiet. I made a sign last week, hung it on the inside of the gate, facing me as I drive in. Just 3 words, burned deep into the grain. You held. It's not for them. It's for me.